Welcome to the Pardes channel. Today we explain Numbers chapter 10 in a clear and simple way, step by step. I am so glad you're here. We're going to take a really deep dive into an absolutely incredible chapter of the Torah. I mean, this is a chapter that's just full of action, profound logistics, deeply human moments, and the literal divine presence. We are going to walk through it methodically, making sure we capture the true essence of what is actually happening on the ground as the Israelites prepare for what is, honestly, one of the greatest journeys in human history.
Okay, so here's our roadmap for this explainer. First, we'll look at the context. Second, the silver trumpets. Third, leaving Mount Sinai. Fourth, the marching order. Fifth, Moses speaks with Hobab. And finally, the ark's journey. Let's just dive right into it.
As we begin, remember that we are going to strictly use the Peshat method today. That means we're focusing entirely on the plain, simple meaning of the text without diving into any deep symbolic, mystical, or Kabbalistic interpretations. What you see is what you get. We want to understand the actual history, the practical commands, the explicit geography, and the straightforward meaning of the Hebrew text. We're looking at the who, what, where, and why exactly as it's presented to us in the scripture. No hidden codes here, just the magnificent, plain truth of the text itself.
Section 1. Context. Where exactly are we in the story right now? Well, we find the Israelites camped at Mount Sinai, officially organized into a massive nation, poised and completely ready to finally begin their desert journey.
Section 2. The silver trumpets, covering verses 1 through 10.
The chapter opens up with God commanding Moses to make 2 trumpets out of hammered silver. Now, these are going to serve as the ancient world's ultimate communication system. And just think about the logistics for a second here. You've got an enormous population spread out over a vast area in the desert. You don't have cell phones, you don't have public address systems or walkie-talkies. So how do you tell everyone to move? How do you call a massive meeting? Well, God's solution is so practical and yet so beautiful. It's essentially a simple binary code. If the priests stand at the entrance to the tent of meeting and blow both silver trumpets, every single person in the massive camp knows, okay, we are supposed to gather ourselves before Moses. But if the priests only blow one trumpet, the general population knows to just stay right there in their tents because only the princes, the heads of the thousands of Israel, are being summoned to assemble. It's so efficient.
But wait, it gets even more detailed, because the actual type of sound mattered immensely. A standard blast, that meant assembly. But an alarm blast? That meant it was time to march or engage an enemy. When an alarm blast was sounded, it was the explicit, undeniable signal for the camps to pack up and set forward. The text even specifies that when the first alarm is blown, the camps on the east side take their journey. Then, when a second alarm is blown, the camps on the south side set forward. You see, it's this highly structured acoustic trigger for a massive, multi-phased mobilization.
Now, these trumpets weren't just about moving people around. They had a profoundly spiritual purpose too. God explicitly states that the sons of Aaron, the priests, are the only ones authorized to blow them. This literally elevates the act from simple crowd control to a sacred divine ordinance. For instance, if they go to war against an enemy oppressing them in their land, they are to sound an alarm with these trumpets, and when they do, God promises they will be remembered and saved. But it wasn't just for war either. In days of gladness, during appointed seasons, new moon festivals, and right over their burnt and fellowship offerings, these trumpets are to be sounded. They act as this constant, echoing memorial before the Lord, beautifully bridging the gap between the Israelites' daily earthly lives and their eternal covenant with God.
Section 3. Leaving Mount Sinai, looking at verses 11 through 13.
This is it, guys. The preparation is over. The tabernacle is built. The tribes are meticulously organized. The silver trumpets are forged and ready to go. Following God's explicit command through Moses, the visual sign of the lifting cloud guides them out of Sinai and leads them directly to the desert of Paran. And the plain text gives us the exact specific date. It is the 20th day of the 2nd month in the 2nd year after leaving Egypt. On this specific day, the cloud, which is the visible manifestation of God's presence, lifts up from above the tabernacle of the testimony. Once that cloud lifts, the Israelites set forward by their stages out of the wilderness of Sinai. They don't just wander around aimlessly, they travel deliberately from place to place, following that cloud until it finally comes to rest in the wilderness of Paran. And as verse 13 points out, this was the very first time they took their journey according to the commandment of the Lord by the hand of Moses. It's a huge historical milestone.
Section 4. The marching order, covering verses 14 through 28.
I want you to just imagine moving a modern city without a single motorized vehicle. If hundreds of thousands of people just packed up and started walking all at once, it would be a dangerous, gridlocked disaster, complete chaos.
But God is a God of order, and he provides a very, very specific sequence. So the crucial point here is the sequence itself. First, to step out is the massive camp of Judah, commanded by Nahshon, along with the tribes of Issachar and Zebulun. Immediately after they step out, something fascinating happens. The tabernacle is completely taken down. Two specific families of the Levites, who are the tribe tasked with caring for the sanctuary, the Gershonites and the Merarites, load up the really heavy structural pieces. We're talking the curtains, the pillars, the bases, the frames. They take all that heavy stuff and set out second. Following them is the third group, the camp of Reuben, which includes the tribes of Simeon and Gad.
Then comes the fourth group, the Kohathites. And here is where you really see the brilliance of God's logistics. The Kohathites are the Levite family responsible for carrying the most sacred holy objects, like the ark, the altars, and the lampstand. They march in the middle of the procession. Why? Because by sending all those heavy structural pieces of the tabernacle way ahead with the Gershonites and Merarites, it ensures that by the time the Kohathites actually arrive at the new campsite carrying the holy objects, the physical tabernacle is already completely built and ready to receive them. It's just a perfect system. After the holy things, the camp of Ephraim marches. And finally, acting as the protective rear guard for all the units, is the camp of Dan. Every single person, every single piece of the sanctuary has its exact designated place in line. No confusion, no chaos.
Now, having established this massive nationwide logistical undertaking, the text does something really interesting. It abruptly shifts from this wide aerial shot of national movement to a quiet, intensely personal conversation. Right in the middle of all this epic marching, the blasting of the silver trumpets, and the moving of hundreds of thousands of people, Moses pauses. We zoom all the way down to just two men standing face to face in the desert dust.
Section 5. Moses speaks with Hobab, verses 29 through 32.
Moses pulls aside his relative Hobab, the Midianite. According to the text, Hobab is the son of Reuel, Moses' father-in-law. Now, despite having the pillar of cloud to literally guide them from above, Moses still feels the immense human weight of leading these people into a harsh, totally unforgiving desert. So he turns to the one man he trusts who actually knows the terrain. Moses says to Hobab, "We are setting out for the place about which the Lord said, 'I will give it to you. Come with us and we will treat you well.'" But Hobab flat out refuses. He says, "No, I will not go. I am going back to my own land and my own people." But Moses doesn't just accept this rejection. He begs him. He says, "Please do not leave us. You know where we should camp in the desert, and you can be our eyes." It's such a human moment. Even with God's miraculous provision, Moses recognizes the immense value of human experience, local knowledge, and practical wisdom. He knows they need a scout, and he wants Hobab to be their eyes on the ground.
Moses then makes him an incredible offer. He promises that if Hobab lends his earthly expertise to guide them, he will fully share in all the divine blessings God bestows upon Israel. Moses is essentially saying, look, I know you are not an Israelite, you are a Midianite, but if you join us, if you help us get through this perilous wilderness, you will be treated exactly as one of us. Our inheritance will literally be your inheritance. It's just this beautiful picture of inclusion and gratitude. Now, the plain text doesn't actually tell us in this exact verse what Hobab's final decision was, though later books in the Bible do suggest his descendants did indeed settle with Israel. But right here in chapter 10, we just see the raw, heartfelt plea of a leader who isn't too proud to ask his family for help.
Section 6. The Ark's Journey, bringing us to verses 33 through 36.
The conversation with Hobab concludes, and the narrative reaches its spiritual climax as the Ark of the Covenant literally and symbolically takes the absolute lead. Accompanied by the cloud of the Lord by day, the Ark traveled ahead of the massive camp for 3 days specifically to secure a resting place for the people. The text tells us they set forward from the Mount of the Lord on a 3 days journey. But notice the really distinct placement of the Ark here. The Ark of the Covenant went before them during those 3 days. Its explicit purpose, as stated in the plain text, was to seek out a resting place for them. So, while the cloud of the Lord was over them by day to provide guidance, the Ark itself was leading the charge, actively pioneering the path ahead into the unknown, dangerous desert.
And whenever the ark set out to move, Moses would declare this incredibly powerful chant, asking for God's active protection and victory. Just try to visualize the scene for a second. The priests lift the heavy poles of the ark onto their shoulders. The silver alarm trumpets have just sounded out across the desert. Hundreds of thousands of people are beginning to march. And right as the ark begins to move forward, Moses raises his voice over the crowd and declares, "Rise up, O Lord, and let thine enemies be scattered, and let them that hate thee flee before thee." He knows he isn't just moving a wooden box. He is actively invoking the militant presence of God to clear the way through a landscape that is filled with hostile nations and threats.
Conversely, whenever the ark came to rest, Moses would chant this second phrase, beautifully welcoming the divine presence back to dwell among the people. The 3-day journey concludes, the cloud stops, the ark is gently set down at the new resting place, the marching finally ceases, and Moses again speaks directly to God, but this time softly saying, "Return, O Lord, to the countless thousands of Israel." It's such a striking contrast. If the first chant was a fierce battle cry for God to lead them into the unknown, the second chant is like an intimate, welcoming embrace, asking God to settle down and reside safely amidst His people once again.
Finally, let's look at the key ideas and how we can actually apply this simple text to our own lives today. Throughout this explainer, we've stayed strictly with the Peshat, the literal meaning of the text. But even in its most literal form, Numbers chapter 10 is packed with profound, highly practical wisdom for how a community operates, how a leader leads, and how a nation moves forward. So, when we look at the meticulous organization of the camps and the silver trumpets, we really have to ask ourselves, how does this structure apply to our own lives? Think about how much effort God put into detailing the exact placement of Judah, the Gershonites, the Kohathites, and Dan. Think about the specific, detailed rules for blowing those silver trumpets. 2 blasts for everyone, 1 blast just for leaders. Why such obsessive detail? Well, because God knows human nature perfectly.
We learn pretty quickly that order prevents chaos, that seeking help from experienced people is a very wise thing to do, and most importantly, that we should always let our spiritual values lead the way. Without the crystal clear communication of the silver trumpets, the camp would have been completely paralyzed by confusion. Without the specific marching order, people literally would have trampled each other. This teaches us that clear communication and structure are absolutely vital for any group's progress. Furthermore, everyone had a specific place. Whether you were leading the front like Judah, carrying the heavy tent poles like the Merarites, or guarding the rear like Dan, your role was essential to the whole community. We also learn from Moses and Hobab that true leadership involves humility, admitting when you need someone else's expertise and generously inviting them to share in your blessings. And finally, just as the ark went before the people to seek out a resting place, we must let our spiritual center, our connection to God, lead the way in our own life journeys.
Thank you for learning with us. If this helped you understand the chapter better, like, subscribe, and join us for the next chapter.